it was showing up sideways on my computer because I'm using my phone. I have turned my camera. Hopefully now everything makes sense. And thanks for flailing. Thanks for flailing with me this morning, if you are live with me. I felt inspired to paint live, and obviously I'm going to figure it out as I go because I'm reading this book, and I already have a YouTube channel. If you follow me, you know that. But I don't think I've ever painted live before. But when I was reading this book, Martha Beck, who's like my number one spirit animal person, she talked about, so the first half of the book is about anxiety, and the second half of the book is about creativity. And this study was mentioned in the book. It says a study at Drexel University found that making art for as little as 45 minutes reduced subjects' stress hormone cortisol, no matter what their skill level or experience. So I figured joining a live painting group kind of a thing would make more people actually come and stay and paint. And it's basically my goal to help people add more peace in their lives. So before we start, I had my whole thing set up, but since it was so weird, I've got my palette next to me. I've got my spray bottles, and I'm going to spritz my palette to get all of my paint colors. I think they call it, or what I've always called it, is I'm going to wake up my watercolors because I just keep them in this open kind of palette and they dry out. And then I wet them. And then I have two water containers next to me, very, very, very dirty. I am using this watercolor block that's sealed on all the sides. This is just Academy watercolor paper by Bao Hong. I sometimes use the expensive Arches paper, but this works perfectly fine for what I am doing. And if you have individual pieces of paper, what I would do is tear one off the pad and then use masking tape. So I always take some tape and then stick it to a piece of my clothing and then take it back off, because then it's not as sticky and it will not tear your paper when you peel it off. And then you just sort of would paint. You would just tape it around the borders just to help it from getting too wrinkly. Depending on your paper, it's going to wrinkle anyway, but that will help some. So I was imagining painting a landscape today. These are some sketches from before that I'd done for a different project, but I'm thinking it's going to be like a sky, mountain, and then some like flower fields kind of a thing. Now, the thing with watercolor is that you can't like paint here and then paint right below without all the water bleeding together. So we're kind of going to paint this in sections, but I want it to go smoothly to where we can keep painting the whole time. Will this take 45 minutes? I have no idea. As you can see, this is going sort of not smoothly. So I'm spraying my paints one more time. As I said, if you are on my email list, I'm going to mostly be using a size 12 round brush. I love Princeton Heritage brushes. These are not new. And then a size 6. A round brush is really, really helpful because you can put quite a bit of water and paint in the belly of the brush, but also do a relatively fine point. Not that I do a lot of fine point painting. So I'm going to use my size 12 brush, and I'm just mixing it into the water, and I'm going to start up top with the sky. So I'm going to go and just put clean water along the top here. Sometimes I have this giant mop brush, but I will not use that right now because I didn't tell you you should have one. And sometimes that will make the paper too wet. And I don't know, how far down do I want this guy to go? I do want it to end. I don't want to get too much of the paper wet because I want to be able to draw some mountains here. So I'm going to start with that. And now I'll bring my palette over so you can see. So depending on what you have in your palette, I usually do my skies either like a gray or maybe a little bit of blue. You can see I haven't cleaned my palette since 2018. So I'm going to mix a little bit of this gray. Now, if you don't have a gray, do not worry about it. You can sometimes mix opposite colors and get kind of a gray. Like if you have a brown and a blue, that'll make kind of a gray. And I'm actually going to add some blue into mine. So another thing you can do is just take any blue you have, and if it seems too bright or overbearing, You can add some water to it. If you have any brown on your palette, it'll like soften the blue if you put a little bit in, just because I don't like a really, really bright sky. So I'm going to take some of this watercolor and I'm just going to dot it in kind of like this. And watercolors will dry lighter than what they look like. So a lot of times you think you're going to get like, I'm adding a little bit of ultramarine blue. That was way too much. You can't see my palette, but it was way too much. So I'm adding some brown to it to make it less insane. So watercolors will dry lighter. So you might think like, oh man, that's too much. I did too much. And then it'll be fine. Later, it'll be not as crazy and bright as you thought it would be. So yeah, I dotted some in and now I'm just doing a little back and forth. A lot of times you'll see me make a swoopy kind of sky like this. I don't know. I didn't feel like doing that today. So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth with my 12-inch brush. I think I'm going to add more. Usually a sky, not that I necessarily go for realism, but usually a sky is a deeper color up top and then lighter as it gets to the horizon. So I am gonna add a little bit more. I added a little blue to my gray. You see I have kind of a turquoisey color. And then I just put my brush in some mostly clean water. And I'm just sort of gonna go up and down like this to blend everything. You can see where I originally put down some of that color. It's retained the darker areas. And I am gonna take my brush one more time and go back in and just dot in some colors. And if you feel like things are too dark, you can add just water over the top and kind of brush it down. You can also dry off your brush with something like my dirty bar mop towels or a paper towel, and you can lift color back out of the sky like that. And you also, if you wanted to, could drop some paint onto your paper accidentally. You could also take something absorbent and you can go like this and you can remove some color if you want it to kind of look like there's some clouds there. You could use a paper towel for this. You could use, I just bought like a pack of these online, just like, they call them bar mops. It's kind of hard to tell with the light in my room plus the shine, but I've just removed a little bit of the color. And again, if you had been painting it darker, you could still remove this and it might look a little bit more like white puffy clouds. What is falling over? I have things everywhere. All right, so there's the sky for now. I'm gonna leave it and be happy with it. Until this is dry, I don't want to paint anything here. So I'm going to leave room for some mountains. I haven't completely decided what that's going to look like because I don't plan that far ahead. And so here, around here, I'm going to start kind of like a field of grass and flowers, I guess. So again, here's my palette. Depending on what colors you have in your palette, I'm going to kind of try to make a yellowy green. So I have lots and lots of greens, but if you have zero greens or if you just have like the primary colors, you could take any blue. That's a cerulean blue. That's a Prussian blue. You could just take any blue you have and then add a yellow to it. So like this is my Naples yellow. And that looks kind of blue, but I bet when it comes out on the paper, it'll actually be relatively green. And I like to make a lot of different greens. So you can just keep adding and adding color into this and make a bunch of different greens. It's actually really fun to do it that way. And I'm gonna switch to my size 6 brush. And I'm just going to go from here. And in the far distance, I have decided I'm gonna add some more yellow. I have some car yellow. So I'm gonna that's too much, I don't like that. I added some clean water to my brush just to make that slightly less intense. So that's my in the distance field. that I have created just by going back and forth. I did switch to my size 12 brush, and I'm keeping kind of like a straight line back here for the horizon, if you will, of the field, and then I'll do some mountains. I actually think I want it to go up a little bit higher. So we'll make that go up a little bit higher. And, you know, it could be a little bit uneven. We'll add mountains later. And then I want it to have some movement and texture. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to that same color I was using. And I'm just going to do some like upward strokes. You can see how wet this is. Obviously, like if you're painting wet on wet, it just totally, it does not make crisp lines. It totally goes everywhere. But you can change the movement and the direction of your painting and your pieces when it's wet or when it's dry. So I'm just going to kind of do up and down. I'm going to add a little blue to my color, just trying to add some interest and textures. And I'm going to add a little brown. If you do not have brown, the best way to make browns and grays is by adding opposite colors on the color wheel. So red is opposite green, blue is opposite orange, and yellow is opposite purple. So if you add colors that are opposites, it will usually make some sort of brown color, gray color, and it's useful. It's useful for painting landscapes because you get a brown without needing to have a brown. So, can you hear the train out there? Can you hear my child yelling? Okay, now I'm gonna start, that's kind of in the distance. We'll work more on that later. Now we're gonna start adding color. I usually make my flower fields with pinks, blues, purples, that kind of thing. The colors are completely up to you. I would maybe keep it in a color family like yellows and oranges or purples and pinks or something like that, just because we're gonna be painting wet on wet. And colors can get muddy because we're kind of going to be layering things on top of each other as we go. So colors can get kind of muddy if you are using a lot of those opposite colors. Like you probably wouldn't want to do a field of like purple flowers with yellow flowers right now, just because you're working when everything is wet. So I will be using my periwinkle, probably my cerulean blue. I have this pink color that I might be using, and I'll just be kind of mixing them as I go. And I'm even, while this is still wet, gonna add a few dots. So I have this pink color. It's called Permanent Rose. It's quite dark. So I'm just adding water with my brush over here. And I'm gonna just take a few dots of it and add it in here to make it look like maybe out here there is a continuation of some light pink flowers way out there in the distance. And yes, it's going to spread out. That's okay. That is what happens when you put wet watercolor on wet watercolor. This is just to kind of give the impression of some flowers back there. And now we're going to kind of imagine that we're coming closer here. So we're going to add more of that. So I added some more Permanent Rose to my palette. I'm adding a little red, but you can just use a straight up pink, any pink you have. You could add some blue to it to make it purpley. If you're going in the orange kind of direction, you could add some yellow. And I'm just going to continue, but on the dry part, I'm going to add some dots of this kind of magenta color, and I will let a little of it bleed into the wet part. And normally, when I'm not also trying to talk and think, I just kind of relax. I listen to a podcast. I don't think about anything. I don't feel self-conscious. And before I started this live, I was thinking about how I wanted to encourage all of you when you're creating, and anytime really, to practice what's called kind internal self-talk. I find it helpful for creativity because I think in our culture, we can be kind of hard on ourselves all the time, but especially when we are doing something creative. So just saying things to yourself like, nice work, good job. I see that you're trying something new. That's awesome. And I find it really relaxing and soothing. And I hope that you will say some nice things to yourself and feel that way as well. I'm going to use the same color. And so there are some different flower shapes that you can make that you really, really are simple. We're not going to go crazy. I'm just going to take my size 6 brush and push down and make one almost like petal kind of thing like that. And go in a circle like that. I don't know. It's not a particular kind of flower. It's just a floral kind of shape. And I'm putting them closer to the viewer with more detail so it looks like they're up closer. And you can do them kind of right on top of each other. Maybe back here there'd be some, but they'd be a little bit smaller. Maybe one would be kind of going off the page. Again, maybe back here, you can still kind of make out the shape, but it's pretty far away. And I'm just using the tip of my brush. My 2 round brushes, I use these for almost everything, almost all the time. Like they, to me, are the most versatile brushes. I love the round brushes. If you missed it in the beginning, the Princeton Heritage round brushes, definitely my favorites. And then here, kind of in the middle, I'll just do some more shapes, kind of flowery kind of shapes, or just circles or lines up and down. All good, all fine, all wonderful. You're doing a great job. I'm doing a great job. Everybody's doing a great job. And I think now I'm going to move on to a slightly more purple flower. So if you've been using a pink or a red, if you add pretty much any blue to it, you can make it a more purple color. So I've just added a little cerulean blue, and now I have a slightly more purple color. And I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, another trick that I do, I take my arm and I rest my painting arm. So I put my arm here, and then I rest my painting arm on it, because otherwise I put my hand into the wet watercolor. So this just kind of gives me a way to rest my hand, but keeps me off the wet watercolor. So when I'm not painting live, as you know, a lot of my paintings, or as you may know, I don't know for sure, a lot of my paintings are kind of like collages of sections. So I don't have to think as much about painting wet on wet. I don't have to think as much about putting my hand in things. I just sort of paint the section, let it dry, and then move on. But if you're going to sit down for a painting session, it's nice to have some tricks so that you can do it all at once and not have to stop. If you've ever seen any of my older paintings where I keep the white lines between the elements, that's another trick. Like paint a sky and then put like a white line between, and don't let the wet on wet touch. And that also allows you to keep painting. And you can also, of course, switch between watercolor pads. So for this, I think I'm making a little bit more of the color because I ran out. For this flower shape, I'm going to do sort of like a cluster of dots all together, like so. And I'm just pushing down on the tip of the brush. I'm going to refill, maybe put one over here. Sometimes I'm imagining a real flower. Sometimes I'm just making random flower shapes. Also, for fun, I might dot a little purple at the bottom of these, because it is fun to paint wet on wet. Just to add a little extra zhuzh to that. And maybe there's the top of one here. And back here, maybe we'll do like some dots, like so. Not always lifting my brush all the way up. Kind of just making like a shape, like a long flower shape. And of course, if you're really looking into a flower field, there would be like bazillions of flowers, right? Like you probably can't paint a bazillion flowers in this period of time, but you can paint some. And maybe I'll make some of the shapes longer back here. Okay, I'm gonna add some green now. So I already have that green mixed from before, this one. And I'm going to, from the back here, add in dots of green. So in the back, and I hope my camera's not shaking. In the back, we'll do dots. Now, as I mentioned, red and green are opposites. So if you are using opposite colors and you do too much wet on wet smushing, it can get very muddy. So just, I'm bracing my hand and I'm just like lifting up and down. And it's okay if some of it mixes together. You just don't want the color to actually mix into a brown color back here. You just want to lift and lower, lift and lower, lift and lower. And I might even add some dots of this color back here just to continue that blending of the distance and the closer. And while I still have a teeny bit of this left, I'm going to add a few little wisps here. Again, you can paint right into the wet. It's okay. Just rinse off your brush frequently and don't do too much. Just kind of lift and leave all through here. Now I am almost out of this color, so I'm going to have to mix another green soon. I'm just trying to incorporate some of this color throughout. I'm going to do some things like this, using my size 6 brush and either pushing down like that to make little blade of grass shapes, or brushing up like this. You can kind of get a thinner stroke. I'm going to add some more blues and yellows to my palette. My intention here is to make a little bit of a darker green, because it's good to have a variety of values in your painting, light values. Like if you turned your painting black and white, you wouldn't all want it to be the same exact shade of gray. Like you would want some areas to be a little darker, some areas to be a little bit lighter. So here's a slightly darker green that I will also add in. Some of these I'm kind of trying to make it look like maybe there are stems on these flowers. Really, this is just an impressionist piece that we are just trying to make a color combination that makes us happy. We're not worrying too much about it. And I'm going to do the same thing back here and dot green throughout. And this there will probably be many, many shades of green that I use. And then also dot it back here just to continue that. And as this dries, I might add more or different details. I really have to see how it looks before I make that choice. And I do think I want to add some blue flowers. So I am going to I use this light blue a lot, this cerulean blue. I'm going to take that blue. It already had some periwinkle here. So if you wanted a lightish blue color, you could add a lot of water to whatever blue you have, and you could also add a touch of red or a touch of pink to make it a slightly purple blue. And I will just continue with what I've been doing, which is starting with the dots back here. And then we'll make some big bluer shape here. What would be a good flower shape? Maybe I'll do some I'm holding my brush kind of just the tip and making a few little, maybe I do know the names of some flowers, but I can't think of any blue flowers at the moment. So this is kind of like a series of connected flowers that are all together. And I'll add some green in a little bit to make it look like maybe they have a stem attaching them. And then back here we can do a series of dots. And again, if you were looking, I live in Western North Carolina, and we have these plots of wildflowers along the highway that bloom this time of year. There's a field right now, I think it's poppies, And then there's another one that's these pink and white flowers, and you just look out and you cannot make out any individual flower shapes. It is just this sea of orange, this sea of red, pink, whatever. Sometimes yellow. It's so beautiful. It just, I really enjoy that they have done that. So you do not have to worry about making any specific flower shape. All you have to do is put down pretty colors. And you can already see here how, like, yes, the lighting in my, let's see here. You can already see how up close it looks like it's closer. The shaking. These, just because there are some actual flower shapes and it looks like it's kind of bleeding out into the distance. Bleeding out, that's not a good way to put it. I just made another green. I took the green I had and added a bunch of yellow to it. You can add a little water to it to water it down. And I'm going to continue my quest. I don't care if there's some white left in this field, but I want it to be primarily filled with pinks and greens and just lots of movement. Maybe there's some butterflies out there in the field. Who knows? And we personally, it is Memorial Day here in the United States, and it is not very nice weather for us today. So I do not think I think this will be the only flower field that I am enjoying today. Gosh, I love this color. This is one of my favorite colors to wear too. It was readily available in the 90s. I feel like you can still find it today too though. And just do some little clusters of color, and I'm just kind of moving quickly around the paper, adding in color where I want. I think it'd be nice to add some red here. I have this, I believe the color is called Scarlet Lake. It's kind of an orangey red. You don't have to. You can add more blues, more purples, more oranges, more yellows, whatever you're doing. I'm just gonna kind of like make a shape like that. This might be, is that too much? I don't usually add red to my paintings because I find it, I like red flowers in real life, but I find it overbearing, but we will add a little here. That's really eye-catching. And now I think I would like to make a slightly bluer green. So if you were just mixing yellow and blue, to make a green, you would just have a higher ratio of blue to green. You really can make many, many colors just with the 3 primary colors, although it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to have a bunch of colors in your palette. And I'm going to continue here just brushing up, up, up with my size 6 brush, the most versatile brush for me. And we'll do some up, up, up. And I said I was going to kind of connect these blues, so I will kind of go like that and make it seem like they're on some sort of stem all together. It's looking pretty. It's getting there. Definitely getting somewhere. I added a little more yellow to the green that I had, but not quite as much. Right now, I just want to fill in some of these spaces. And it might be time to work on mountains and let this dry a little bit and then come back to it. I am going to mix a straight up purple. So that's just going to be blue with red or blue with pink, either one. So this is a little bit of a darker purple. And I'm primarily trying to fill in some of these areas that don't have any color in them. And I'm just sort of making like a rough, long triangle kind of shape. And then in the back, more dots, more dots. I sort of regret adding the red. It's a small regret. Ooh, the sun's coming out really bright. All right, I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. Let's go back up here to the sky, which, okay. I am going to try to adjust the curtains, and I actually do. I'm using a canvas lamp that has a light, but I don't love the way the light makes watercolors look. Actually, that's okay. So I think I'm gonna just do some purple mountains in the background. I have this periwinkle color. If you do not have a purple in your palette, you can just mix a blue and a red or a blue and a pink together, and then add water to it. We want it to be kind of a light color. So again, I'm bracing my hand here, and I'm gonna start where this ended, which this should be all dry now. And I live in the Blue Ridge Mountains, so I see them all the time. So I'm just gonna kind of make a loose up and down shape. And I'm putting my paintbrush in the water, and then I'm gonna come back and push my brush flat like this and get some more water on my brush and a little bit more color, and then just sort of push. I need a little more color than that. I'm just gonna kind of push it back and forth flat. And I'm gonna go back and add a second layer, but I'm gonna take this, because watercolor is kind of transparent, I want this to go all the way down to here so that when we paint another layer, you can't see the line where I finished this. A size 12 brush would probably be better right now to get more paint. And if it's looking splotchy and uneven like that, you can just add more water. You can brush it back and forth to kind of even it out. Okay, so then once that dries, we'll add another layer, but I wanted to get that in there. All right, so now you can see we have kind of a full composition from top to bottom. And really it's just about adding in more details. Like there is too much white here. You can definitely tell, like why is it white? So let's add more green. And I'm just gonna continue blending up, mixing up greens by adding a yellow, of which I have many, to a blue. You can use any combination that makes you happy. And I'm just gonna go through and try to fill in some of the areas that are white, and then I will go back also and add more flowers. And then this area, I'm not quite sure what we're gonna do here. Probably need to let it dry a little more. I would like it to blend better than it's blending. And of course, you probably still have lots of wet paint, so if it mixes together, that is fine. Just if you're getting any muddy kind of colors, lift your paintbrush up, wash it off, and then start somewhere else. And if you're picking up a lot of color on your brush, before you dip it back into your green, rinse it off so it doesn't get too muddy. All right, I feel like this needs some bright pink, so I'm gonna go back and grab my dark pink, which I'm not even gonna dilute at all. And I'm gonna put some pretty aggressive kind of hot pink back here. Aggressive hot pink. Would that be a good name for a band? Or a good name for, I'm picturing like a Hot Topic alternative store called Aggressive Hot Pink. Guess I'm being quite aggressive with that. Look at that. But I am doing a good job of filling in that white. I do not like that. That's okay. Let's do, I'm gonna do some like flicks, shapes of the bright pink up here. Again, watercolor, you can usually see through it. That's cool. I like that. You don't have to worry about it being see-through. Just go with the flow. I think one of the reasons that I love watercolor so much is because it does flow. And I feel almost like I'm working with nature. I know watercolor paints are not, directly from nature or anything, but I think I like the way that you don't know how it's going to dry sometimes, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And I like the way the water moves and can change things. I just find it to be a really beautiful and satisfying medium. This is gonna need, I told you I don't like that. I still don't like it, but that's okay. I'm gonna add some green to it, I think. So, over here on my palette, I just used a dark blue. That's way too, that'd be good for the ocean, but it's way too dark. So I'm going to, this is a yellow, oh yeah, see, I didn't clean my brush well there. Don't be like me. And if you find your colors are getting dried out, you can just spritz them again. I keep these 2 water bottles nearby when I'm painting. So again, you can just keep mixing greens, different greens, a variety of greens. I'm trying to make this one a little bit lighter. And I really did do a lot of pink over here. So I'm gonna try to make that less noticeable. And you can see the way that I'm adding the green to the pink there, it is making a brown. So I'm gonna try to keep that in the white spots. I don't want that to get all over. I'm washing my brush out. I'm getting fresh green paint. I got rejected by a gallery today. I got an email this morning, or maybe they just said they were full, which feels like a nice way of saying, it's not me, it's you. And it always stings to get something like that, but I also think that it shows that you're doing something. If somebody's saying no to you, it means that you have tried something. And it also makes me think like, well, maybe I'm supposed to be heading in a different direction. I keep trying to live my life in a way that's like doing the next thing that feels good or feels right. And last month, because every month I do try to apply to some various local galleries and stuff. Last month when I got done, I'm going to add some wisps this way. I've got green on my brush and I'm just going to use the tip. Last month when I was applying to various galleries, I'm going to add water to this color because it's too dark. When I was doing it, when I got done, because I would, was making myself do like a few a month, I got done and I felt exhausted. And I was like, this does not feel good. And it just made me wonder if perhaps that phase of what I was doing maybe is over, or at least temporarily over. And then I felt excited by doing this. So it makes me just wonder if, I have to keep listening and changing, and being willing to like go the direction that feels best in the moment. Now, obviously I have to learn how to properly do a live, and I'd like to be able to talk to you first before I start my lives. So this is a work in progress. I appreciate you being here. I would love to know what other things you would like to paint. If you just want to have like a playing around with watercolors, if you want to do more abstract, if you want to do mixed media, I just encourage you, if you feel the desire to be creative, I hope you will find ways to do it because there's no reason not to do it. I think it's essential for your life and for humanity, for you to find ways to express yourself and do things that make you feel calm and peaceful. And, I think the point of life, well, who knows? Who knows what the point of life is? But I do think we're supposed to experience things we enjoy, That is really aggressively a lot of pink. I'm trying to fill in a few more green areas. And as you can see, I did some brushing up there. I'm trying to sort of make it look like it's fading out. And then once this is dry, I am going to paint another layer. I don't think it's quite ready, but it's almost there. And I think I'm going to add some more blue flowers. I'm using my aquamarine blue, but I did add a little red to it to make it a little darker. So it's really more like a purple. And we'll just put some there. It's another really dark color. And I do want to fill in as much white as I can, although I don't mind there being some white. And it's good to step back every once in a while and just take a look. Cool. I'm going to use my bigger brush, my size 12 brush, and that ring light makes it hard to see. It's time to paint the darker layer of the mountains. So where I live in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the mountains look lighter the farther away they are. That's probably true of every place, but so I just want to have a darker color than that. And I did water that down a lot on purpose. So now I am going to draw a second layer of mountains. And this time I'm using my larger brush, but still I'm using the tip, and I'm just doing kind of a similar, just up and down, back and forth. You can always change the shape that you made initially. I usually kind of just go with it. And then I will go back in and fill it in. And that's a little wobbly, so I will fix it. And now I'll come back in like I did last time. This is dry now. I have a bunch of paint on my hand though, so I don't want to get that on my sky. And I'm just gonna kind of use the side of the brush and go along like this. Make it look like it's meeting that grassy field. And I did have a little green up here, and what you can do is, I'm gonna make kind of a dark green by using a dark blue and adding it to the green I already had, and then adding yellow. And I do have lots of greens in my palette too, I just don't use them very often. So I've got this green color. And I'm just gonna do a little bit of dotting like down here to maybe there are trees back here. And they'll just kind of do what they're gonna do. But maybe there's some pine trees back there. There's a forest of trees in the distance. So I think that's pretty good. Now, when it's completely dry, I could go back and I could add more layers of green so there's no white. I might use a black marker, like my thin black pens, to draw some birds up top. But here we have a flower field with a sky, and it's been almost 45 minutes. So I hope that if you painted with me, you enjoyed yourself. And if you have suggestions for what you would like to paint next time, I would love to know. So I'm going to end this if I can figure out how. Thanks for coming.